All right. When I was tasked with doing the demo for this month, I was going to go with some more advanced kind of things that I've been doing, like with the Fokker of how I was using a jig and bending paper and how to make a wood grain, ribs, and things like this. Was that bothering you?
Well, you couldn't see anything you were doing.
Well, I haven't done anything yet.
Right.
So I brought up the idea, looked for some ideas from some folks as to what what they wanted to see, kind of what the general group might want, and we have a lot of people who might have not seen some of the paper model work. So we'll just bring in some basic paper model construction, kind of give people an idea of how it works and what it is and what it would look like. So what I've got, there is a misconception out there, paper modeling or paper crafting or origami. They are all completely different disciplines. Origami, of course, is just taking a single piece and folding it with nothing else, turning it into a shape. Paper crafting is something along the lines of scrapbooking or things like that, making the little construction paper rings. That is paper craft. Paper modeling is it's scale modeling, but you are using a paper product, cardstock, regular bond paper, stuff like this. There are two different ways of going about it. There is the electronic download. You buy a kit, there's a lot of free kits out there. You download it to your computer, you print it onto your cardstock, and you go and build. There are pre-printed kits, which I left mine sitting on the exact same spot I had it to so that I could remember to get it when I left the house. But it comes in a book. It looks just like a magazine, good heavy cardstock type paper, but it's pre-print, professionally printed, and various skill levels with that. When you talk about these kind of models, it's just like when it comes to scales, there are some internationally different scales, whereas in the US we primarily build 1/48, 1/32nd, 1/35th, things like that, because the paper modeling was a product of the European need for a hobby that was cheap. They picked some rather different scales. Instead of 1/48, they have 1/50. Instead of 1/32nd, they have 1/33rd, and so on. The advantage, if you buy a pre-printed kit, you've got two choices. Build it the scale that they give you, or you can scan it and rescale it into whatever scale you would like. So if you're a constant scale builder, like I am, I rescale everything to my size. The electronic kits, it's the same concept. You can get it, it's designed at a certain scale, but again, being an electronic file, when you go to print it, you can print it down or enlarge it to a different scale, to whatever you would like. The detail levels, those are the same as the plastic kits. You can buy a beginner snap-type plastic kit that's got 6 parts, okay? Not a big deal. You can buy something, and there's a great example right here. This gigantic box of plastic right here. How many parts are in that kit?
23, 2400.
Okay. The cardstock modeling, paper modeling is the same one. You can get something such as this one here that's, it's a single page, very, very basic kit, great for a beginner. All right? You can move on up. Then you get one that, has a few more parts, a little bit more advanced. As the skills develop, just like with the plastic side, you keep moving up to different skill levels, different parts, more parts. There are some of these can run into the neighborhood of 1,200 pieces for a paper, what people consider a paper model. It is mind-boggling. The Fokker was the perfect example. I had over 1,100 parts in that. So it's just like a plastic kit when it comes to that. The more you put into it, the more you want, the bigger it can be. When you roll into it, let's pass these around. Other one here. There's different kinds of construction styles. You got adjoining tabs where when you go and cut your parts out, there will be a built-in tab here. Then you have some where you go to cut the part out and you would have joiner strips. These are internal. And when I start building, I'll describe the advantages of how each one would work. To me, there's not that many advantages to this, but for somebody who's newer to the hobby, this is a good way to go. The rescaling, recoloring, one of the advantages here, if you don't like, you get a kit, the plastic kit, and it is bare plastic, you apply the paint and the weathering with an outside medium. I can come in and take this, and using my computer and some programs, I can do the exact same thing, only I just do it with a computer and then print it. I can have panel shading, I can pre-shade panel lines, I can weather, I can add textures, just different, I still get the same effects, I'm just going about it in a different way. I can, it's the same thing, goes the same thing with color modulation or what they call scale effect. A lot of people who's been doing this for a long time remembers that. The farther away from an object you are, the lighter the paint appears, the color appears. It's the same thing if you're building a smaller scale model, then your paint would be lighter. You would lighten your paint a little bit. And there's formulas and percentages. I do the same thing. If I'm building a larger type model, I will have a little bit of richer color. If I'm building a smaller scale model, I will lighten it up a little bit to keep that scale effect. A lot of people look at this and they don't think there's that much to it. I'm going to give you a couple of quick demonstrations of how it can be. What you do, get your kit, you've got your parts cut out. I'm going to start with just these very simple little parts here. Now these are going to be quick and easy because well, there's not a lot of time for me going. For a basic thing, you're going to roll, and you're looking for, just for this basic one, it's just going to be, you're looking for some tubes. So what you're going to do, you just come in, and I would usually have a larger dowel, but that's just what I had for today. You just kind of roll it and get some shape into the paper. Paper has a grain. People do not realize that paper has a grain. If you look at the sheet paper, the grain usually runs this way. And when you're wanting to print, you want to look at that because if you're rolling such as this way, rolling it this way, you want to have it printed so the roll works with the grain. It's going to give you a smoother roll. These are not going to be smooth, and I don't have a problem with that. I do have a problem. Apparently, I forgot my glue. That's a bad thing. So, all right, be that as it may, I will make this work. After you get it rolled, you would come in, you have your glue on this tab right here, you roll it in, and you would hold it until your glue sets. Now here's where the disadvantage of this type of a tab comes in. You're going to have a noticeable step right here, and I'll pass this around in a minute for everybody. You would have a noticeable step where these pieces of paper come together. As you do that, using one of these, the tab, you would have a glue strip actually on the inside. Once you rolled it, then it's going to become a flush seam. So it's going to hide that seam a whole lot better. Okay? And if you want to, I'll pass these around, you kind of play with them and see what I'm talking about. That's going to cover and keep that from being a raised step, which is very, very obvious, especially when you start putting in some formers. Check that some here. It becomes a little more obvious. It throws off the shape because now you've also got the step inside. So if you're trying to do your former in there, it's going to come up and just give it a wrong shape completely. Another advantage with this is edge color. Okay, the edge of that, when you go and cut it out, and you take a look at it when it gets passed around, that's going to be a white edge. If you've got this stepped up here, it becomes even more glaringly obvious that there's a seam there. So what you come in and do, make sure I get my colors lined up here. All right. Once you get your colors matched, we'll come in. Let me use the just use a colored pen. These are not my favorites. I actually use what's called a Pitts Artist pens. Works a whole lot better. There's not a lot of bleeding. Bleeding, you'll see that when it goes around, is how it comes into the colored portion of your part. That's called bleeding. It's bad. These pens are notorious for that. I don't use them a lot, but the Pitts are really good. You just take and run that colored pen around the edge on the colored parts. If you look at that P51 right there, you can see really, especially back there like with those checkers and stuff, how that can affect how that part's going to look. Doesn't take a lot. Glues are important. Your choice of glue is important because glue, of course, most of these glues are water-based. Water and paper and ink don't go well. You'll see some guys who have built kits, paper kits, and they've got smears, smudges, whatever the case may be, because they've used too much or too watery a glue. There's several glues out there that are really good. I'm a big fan of Aleene's tacky glues because they have a less water content, they quick grab. You sit there, once you get the edge coloring, now that it's dried a little bit, you can put these parts together and you can see how you don't have quite as much of a white seam. And what I can do to make that a little easier for you to be able to tell the difference, I'll do half of this tab over here. That way you'll be able to see more like what I'm talking about with that one too. There, I'll start rolling these parts around so that you can start taking a look at how the tabs affect the seam and raising it versus being a flush mount, a flush seam, how the edge coloring affects it with that white edge, and that type of thing. Something else that a lot of people don't consider: thickness of a paper. Well, this is actual 67-pound cardstock. I just printed those, just because I'm never going to build that stuff. That's just display stuff. You get a seam, you get a crease. Now this is going to be our vertical stabilizer. Right here, this is a 30-second. I rescaled this up, it's a MiG-21, I made it a 30-second scale. Because we're going to have a hard crease right here, running through the center of this is a fold line. So what you do, you have a scoring tool, and all I did was take a number 16 X-Acto blade, and I filed it down to where it was dull. Because what this is going to do with the paper fibers, as you run it through those paper fibers, it's going to loosen them up and crease them just a little bit. So when you go to fold that, you get a sharper fold. If you try to fold this now, it's going to go everywhere except where you want it to go. So you come in, run this thing right down that crease line, fold line, score line. It's known by several different names. Now what I like to do, depending on which direction the fold is, because you do have different types of folds. You have mountain folds or valley folds. I will start it on the side opposite where I need it to fold, which in this case is the front side here. Then I'll turn it over and follow that line all the way back down so that it folds properly the other side. The lighting's not real good, so I don't have a good eye of where that's at right here. We'll just fake it a little bit. We'll take, I'm going to go ahead and do the edge coloring with this one so that you can see the difference of what this will do. So come through an edge color. Now, what is the bane of a wing, a vertical stabilizer, rudders, whatever the case may be, on a plastic model? What is the one thing that keeps it from being realistic?
Not being straight up and down.
Okay, that too. The thickness. If you have two pieces of plastic and you put them together, and it's supposed to be a sharp trailing edge, you get something that's like this. Okay? It's the same thing with paper, and people don't think about that. If you go and just fold this over, and I'll just do this one here real fast, it's not going to matter. You can see how there's a thick discrepancy in this. It should be a good sharp trailing edge. But it's not, it's thick because you've now built up the layers of this stuff. How do you counter that? People don't believe that you actually sandpaper. You sandpaper. What I do is I'll come in, if I know that this is going to be my trailing edge, I will come in and I will take and thin that trailing edge of the paper down. I'm basically giving a bevel to the edge of it so that when I go to close it, instead of having it lay like this, it's now going to lay like this. We're going to have a good sharp edge on there. So we'll bevel that out on both sides. For sake of simplicity, I'm just sanding away. I have got issues. I will sit there and count the number of strokes that I put on each one, sanding it so it's even. We all understand that. We know Ray's got issues. So once you get that sanded out, you can turn around, and with it being edge colored now, you can put those two together. This one I need to do a little bit more. But you'll be able to see, if I had my glue, it would be even more apparent. Because what you've done is not only have you beveled this edge, you've loosened up these fibers. So that once you put your glue on there and get a good thin coat, it soaks in, and you can take your fingernail, seal it off like this, and you wind up with a seriously sharp trailing edge. And it's the same exact thing that you would want, with a plastic model. You're looking to get the best thing you can. Separate that like that. And when I pass this one around, you'll be able to compare the two parts and see what I'm talking about, how it has thinned out and become a little closer to what it would look like versus 3 layers of paper stacked up on it. Now, with this particular one, there would be, as I said, would be a former and a framework that would go up in here. Those of you who built the flying balsa kits, things like that, it works on the same principle. Your formers, fuselage formers, you would have these parts set up. You would take these, would get glued in, and what you're doing, you're giving it structural integrity as well as a shape. All right. Now these are, this would be at the upper ends of what a lot of people would do. People who are just starting, it's a good thing. There are simple stuff out there. There's difficult stuff, just like everything else, just like the plastic side. A lot of I built plastic models for years. This actually came out of my need to have some modeling supplies that I could take when I went out with the military. I got to where I was traveling so much, and I could not load up plastic kits, compressors, paints, glues, everything I needed. Well, I found some stuff one day online. I tried them. I found that I could take 6 months worth of modeling kits with me in a box the size of this, and I didn't have to worry about anything toxic. I didn't have to worry about finding a power source for a compressor or whatever. And this just it started out as a necessity, so I didn't lose my mind when I was out on the road. And I saw this work. It came somewhere in that time frame, but it could have been before, depending on who you talk to in my life. It does provide an easy way to be able to take some modeling projects out with you, where you don't have to worry about taking backpacks full of supplies, life support systems to get it done. You throw in some white glue, an X-Acto knife, ruler, just some very, very basic things, and you can hit the road and you're going. So I'll start passing these two around for you to be able to try and make a quick comparison of how, the stacked up edges versus a sanded and trimmed edge. I'll start with you, since you have to be handy. To give you an idea on the MiG-21 of some of the stuff that I was talking about, I did have the instructions for you to take a look at and pass around too, of how this would come together, where you would have, the MiG-21's got a fuselage, it's a one piece. This one, you know, has got 7 different sections just for the main fuselage. Because each one's built up with a set of formers, and you have to put it all together such as that.